everybody, welcome back to 40 Videos. This is 40 Reviews. I am your host, Professor Pretentious, and today we're going to be reviewing Companion, the new horror movie that comes out this Friday, January 31st. I didn't intend to review this one, but I stumbled into a free screening. Just so happened to be Companion, that was the movie that they were showing. So I'm just going to start with saying that I've been really deeply mired in AI robot fiction with a lot of it. We study this in my seventh grade class, so I assigned them Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, as well as the short story by Brian Aldiss, Super Toys Last All Summer Long, which AI is based on. We look also at the adaptations of these books and these stories as well. I wanted to work on a unit about AI with them and focus on it. In large part, starting out just from an existential dread of being an English teacher facing ChatGPT. And it was really rewarding when we did it last year. They really enjoyed it as well. And I learned that we develop along with AI. Our definition of what makes us human, our definition of humanity develops along with the technology, the way we use it, the way we incorporate it into our lives, the way it becomes part of our identity, and in effect, the way that it changes AI itself. So one of the things that I feel is important, that I really like about this movie, is that a lot of our fiction, particularly in the late 90s in film that we saw, was dominated by some very pessimistic views of AI. A lot of this comes in the history of robot. There's Carol Kopek, who wrote the play Ruhr, which is Rossum's Robots, and invented the name robot, which literally means slave. So from the idea, there's this understanding from us that there is a master-slave relationship, and I think this is where this inherent guilt and expectation of revolt comes in with most of these stories. It really fits into that threat of creative destruction that's built into technology inherently. And I wanted to approach this concept of AI, when I was examining it, with as little prejudice as possible. I'm not a transhumanist or a super adopter of modern technology. I feel strongly that the more we learn about AI and see its developmental trends, our examination of it needs to change. We need to change along with AI and the way that we look at it. And a film like this begins to take steps into that arena while still being a horror movie. So I feel like personally the movie Her, from Spike Jonze, was this sort of tipping point of this sympathetic AI love story. This idea that there is not anything aberrant about this. The idea of a sort of exploration about how love can work in a way that doesn't necessarily stunt us, but can promote growth in us. And this movie plays on that, I think, a little bit. So this movie's main aim isn't really to be clever. It isn't to make statements. It isn't to bring about large ethical, moral conversations. It's pretty straightforward. The movie's here to entertain, to delight for us horror fans. We deal in sort of a musical chairs of plots with horror, with more rigidity than maybe another genre. This one does it effectively in as a film, not necessarily as a story. This film really shines in the cast. My favorite is Sophie Thatcher and Lucas Gage. Sophie Thatcher is so incredibly dynamic. Seeing her, she's had just a great year. Heretic on one end, this movie on another end. She's about to do another victory lap with Yellow Jackets coming out in about a month or so for its third season. And she's just really is so dynamic, presents so much pathos, so much flexibility as an actor. She makes this whole movie. I would always venture to say I wouldn't be as interested in this movie if she wasn't in it, if her performance didn't guide this whole thing. And Lucas Gage, another one, also, he was in Smile 2 this year. Very creepy, very short role in there. But he plays just a very different character in this movie. Very sweet, earnest character, a very love-struck person, and this movie is a lot like that. It follows this line of how much would you do in a relationship, and that question. So an AI film really is only as strong as its performances, and everyone gives excellent performances. It is Sophie Thatcher and Lucas Gage who drive this movie, even more so than who you would think would drive this movie, which is Jack Quaid. But you get to see Harvey Gulen, and he brings the pathos and hilarity that you see from him as Guillermo in What We Do in the Shadows. But he brings on sort of an nice extra asshole edge to this, and Jack Quaid is making quite a new turn in his career, and he's becoming much more of this aw shucks asshole. And just keeps building a brick into this aw shucks asshole edifice that he started with Scream, and to some degree that he's building in The Boys. The depth of the actors, the performance, the rapport that they have with each other, and the chemistry just makes for an infinitely watchable movie. I would love to see this again and again. So we've seen this particular setup before of the killer robot or the AI gone wrong, but more on the edges of AI being a victim in the situation. Movies that have recently done this are the Child's Play remake, Megan, and of course Ex Machina. A lot of these present AI as being a victim of circumstance. Largely, again, the human is the monster, and we do see that in this movie, of course. But this movie doesn't do it sloppily like Child's Play does it. And it's not a teenage geared version like Megan is, and it doesn't even have that heady pontification that Ex Machina has. This film isn't really here to provide depth. That's not its intention. It can do that. If we want to put our tinfoil hats on, we can think about it a little bit more. There's a question here about love as programming. In one of the stories I read with my students, Super Toys Last All Summer Long, there's the character of David, who is a young child who has been purchased by his mother. And they can't really connect together, so she has bought him an android teddy bear. And the android teddy bear and him are able to connect far more than he and the mother are able to connect. And there's just this beautiful scene in which the mother comes and finds these notes written in crayon by David. And he just keeps starting these letters and getting frustrated. She just reads, dozens and dozens of letters in which he starts and tries to profess his love, but he can't do it. And we understand that he's not able to, that he is programmed for her affections to be able to give her comfort and love, but it only works in so much as she's able to do so. And really the beauty of this, the pathos, comes not in the fact that he can't love, but that he's trying to. He's trying so desperately to meet that. But then the question comes in is that part of his programming? Is he at odds with his programming inherently? And that's what this movie really brings in to the forefront. That love can be a form of programming, as they put it here. Some of us are expected or expecting a certain type of person or a certain type of relationship or even a certain power dynamic or give and take. And the question is, what happens when that programming is countered? If you're someone in this story, the companions, who are devoted to a particular person, what happens when that's countered by someone else? How does that resistance show up? And they play it off like a dying relationship, and it really works in that light. It fits so beautifully and simply into this film in a very sardonic way. It really brings up this question of how much should a person or would a person do in a relationship, and particularly when one party is disinterested and the romance has burned out and the other party is still interested. What's the relationship? How does that pull happen? And where's the desperation in that? It itself is a very human conflict. The inability to let go of the attraction that one feels, the identity that one might have developed with another person. And they set this up in a way that the companions must tell the truth. So these companions cannot lie. There are a lot of clever ways that they obfuscate this in the plot. It adds a really subtle dimension to the film about what place brutal honesty has in a relationship. Honesty should engender growth in a relationship. A relationship will die otherwise. It plays with that notion that relationships do require growth. But ironically, what we see is the idea that the AI is more capable than the humans of growth, or really more driven or more willing to approach growth, to accept it, than humans are. We've seen this a lot. The way that this movie does it is particularly in regards to relationships, and I think that's what makes it gratifying, human, and uh, very humorous. It really does have this feeling of part Barbie, part Stepford Wives. And I think what happens is it takes on this idea of AI's functionality as being something novel. The way that we see it, the mechanics of it, of what we understand as to how it can work, has changed as a result of the past decade, perhaps. One of the ways that this film brings in the verisimilitude of this new AI is the use of controls. They use very particular controls and mods for the companions, and we get to see this on display with an app in the phone. And it's something that I haven't seen in a lot of these AI movies, particularly AI horror movies, which tend to sort of remove a lot of the elements of control from the situation to suggest that the AI is completely in control. Whereas this one does this back and forth. And again, it's not subtle. It doesn't need to be subtle for this movie. It's not subtle that it is literally playing with someone's buttons. It adds this dimension and tangibility to this concept, which does feel unique for this genre. It takes a concept that we increasingly understand about the untenability of AI, and it embeds it into this love revenge story that's every bit as suspenseful as it is hilarious. Now, it's always a question in narratives about what pieces of information should be revealed earlier and which should be held back. Now, this isn't going to give you any spoilers because this is right here in the beginning of the trailer. Some writers would say just stop being coy and get on with it, which is sort of what this movie does. From the very beginning, it tells you the plot. It's going to be a companion robot who, for one reason or another, kills someone, and the rest of the people there have to figure out what to do with this. I feel like having that distance between the character and the audience here, introducing her first as a person rather than a robot, really endears us more to her than a movie like, say, Megan, which doesn't have that. She is a companion first and a sentient entity second, whereas, ironically, in this movie, she is a sentient entity, a very human one first, and a companion second. She is the protagonist in this movie. And this is really to the benefit of the movie, very fitting with the concept that companions are unable to lie. From the beginning, we know this. The first scene is reflected back and back again throughout the movie. And there are elements that I don't want to reveal about how the machinations of the plot go. But bringing her in at the forefront of the movie as this primary character, simulating these emotions, these memories, these opinions, and the interactions immediately endear us to her within the first 10 minutes of the movie. So that when the primary conflict is established, God, probably not even 15 minutes in, we're already on her side. But all of its plot machinations are effective. Its twists are well concealed, and the ultimate payoff is very well earned. This isn't a common production from New Line Cinema. I was really surprised to see that they put out this movie. Even the movie poster itself looks a lot more like what you would see as modern indie horror. So it's not like New Line Cinema's films for the past 30 years. It's a lower concept. It has a modest budget, and it doesn't have any A-list stars. It has recognizable names and voices, but no A-list stars. And it really harkens back to the house that Freddy built, the old days of New Line when they were just a distributor. Um, and I'm just wondering, maybe it is trying to restructure its reputation in the horror realm. Maybe they see that Blumhouse can do it, but this is really an interesting statement from New Line about a potential change of course. We'll have to see how the trend goes. That would be nice to see. And as we know in movies, when they say from the minds of or from the creators, the people that brought you, just have to say it. We all know this. You know, it's not Zach Krager. It's not the director of Barbarian. It's not even him as the writer. It's a producer. So they'll always market these films as from a particular director, right, to get maybe the same market share. But it's really when this person is producing or executive producing, it's largely a voucher. And in this case, it's New Line putting a voucher of saying, hey, they're with me, right? So it's the credibility that might come from that. And in that case, I would say that this one has little in common with Barbarian, very little, but really more in common with, I'd say, the movie Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. There's a humor element. There's probably about split down the middle between horror and humor. Very well done. Great cast. Great suspense involving a bunch of people in a house, essentially. But not necessarily what comes out of a lot of these killer robot gone wrong movies. This is a great movie to go out and see. It's not necessarily an indie, but again, it's not a Saw movie. It's not a legacy franchise. And if you want to see some excellent performances from up and coming actors, some of whom have been in this genre for a while, I highly recommend it. And again, I'll say it, this movie is worth your money. So, thank you for coming back. I've been your reviewer, Professor Pretentious, and I will see you next time. Bye.